So this second lesson talks about some different kinds of histograms that you're going to make, okay? The first kind of histogram is just a regular histogram where you use the frequencies. And this is essentially like the little dot plots that I had you make yesterday where we tallied up the frequencies with dots, okay? And so you can see down here that this histogram I put the dots in and then I make a bar out of it. That's what I end up doing is I usually put the data into the histogram and then after I do, I make a bar. Notice that these bars touch because this is a consistent number line. Notice that the bars are the same width because you have to have the same numerical values in each bar. Do you see over here on the board when we did our rent a date activity? These are bar graph. This is a bar graph. Why is that a bar graph and this is a histogram? What?
That's categorical.
Perfect. On the board, our rent a date activity was categorical, whereas this histogram is going to be quantitative data, quantities, numerical values. All right. Second type of thing that we will graph today is a cumulative frequency histogram. So the quality of that cumulative, what does cumulative mean?
Like it stacks.
It stacks up, it totals. It's a running total. We will be accumulating all the bars in front of it. Okay, so by the end, we will have 100% of the data. We'll have all the data. So I want to show you an example, and this one unfortunately, it's not completely drawn to scale, but it gives you still an idea of what's happening. So let's suppose that this picture represents this data. The first one has 4 items in it. So suppose this is 4 items in this first bar. The second set of data contains 6 items. So we would add up 6 items to the existing 4 for a total accumulation that now has 10 items in that bar. Okay? So that bar now has 10 items. Next section contains 3 more items. So I'm going to add up 3 more items for a grand total so far of 13. And finally, there's 2 for a grand total of all 15 items. So it adds up 2 more. See, it's not drawn to scale for a grand total of 15 items. So by the end, you have all data accounted for in this last bar.
So what goes across the bottom of that?
Well, so yeah, across the bottom, that would be your labels for what's in each bar and stuff. Yeah, and you would have frequency over here on the side. You would actually be writing cumulative frequency. And so we're going to practice that right now. So on the next page, we have this, and we are going to take one set of data and we're going to make a regular histogram and a cumulative frequency. So it's not too bad a set of data. It's just 15 students. So we're going to make a histogram and a cumulative frequency. So we're going to do 2 things here. So let's split this in half so we can do both sets of data. So we got a histogram. This is grades of 15 students. So I'm going to do my bottom here is grades. Okay, and then my side is going to be frequency because that's going to be how many students fall in each bar. All right. So how do I determine what goes on the bottom? What do I need to look at first to determine what goes on the bottom of this?
The min and the max.
Good. Figure out your min and max. What's the min grade? 48. What's the max grade? 97. Okay, so remember we want 5 to 10 bins. So how you want to do that?
By 5.
I think by 10s actually. 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. That's going to make 6 bins. So let's do it. So I put little railroad tracks so that I can start at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and I like to put the top one on there when I'm doing the bars so that I have an end. Okay? Now, just like I taught you yesterday, I like to do the dots before I make the bars. So I'm going to take each set of data, like 88, and plop that in there and put my dot. And then there's my 48. And remember where 60 goes? It goes in the right, to the right of that 60. So it goes right there, and so on. So I want you to stack up all your data right now. Okay, and then when I'm done doing the data, then I will make my bars. And they touch each other because it is a number line, a consistent number line. And so there's my histogram. Now, a lot of times people will shade, because technically, if you want to get all technical, I guess those dots are usually not in there. Okay, so anyway, so you could take them away, but anyway.
And they're all touching.
Yes, and these bars touch because they go up to each other. They're numerically in order. Okay. So now let's see how the cumulative frequency histogram looks different. So we're going to start the same. So the bottom is still going to be our grades, and we're still going to do the same type of bins. So let's start there. Now, on the left-hand side, this is not just frequency. This is now cumulative frequency. So it matters that you have a different word on the side. Okay? It makes a difference. Now, if I accumulate and by the end I have 100% of my data, how tall will my last bar be? It's going to be 15 students tall. So that means that when I do my scaling, I need to account for knowing that it's got to go up to 15. All right, so here we go. So let's start our bars. This first bar will contain how much in it? 1. You don't have to write the numbers on top, but for demonstration purposes, so you can, because it's kind of hard to see, I'm going to write how many is in that bar. There's 1 in that bar. The second bar should contain what's on the other side in the first and the second bar together. So how much is in this first and second bar all together over here on the left? A total of 3. So this bar should contain up to 3. Okay? The next bar, between 60 and 70, should include those plus how many more gets added to it. So how much is this total so far that is below 70? That's a total of 7 so far that is below 70. So this has got to add 4 more for a total of 7, not 8. You don't add 4 to the 4 in front. We're adding it to the ones on the left. So the next bar, between 70 and 80, how many does that have? That has 5, so then therefore cumulatively I go up to 12. So I add 5 to the existing 7 for a total of 12. What gets added between 80 and 90? 2 more, so that makes it a total of 14. And then in the 90s, how many gets added? 1 more for a grand total of 15 students. That is a cumulative frequency histogram. So I could just look at one bar. I could just look at how many people got less than an A. 14. So I can just look at that one bar and know what accumulated up until that point. All right. So that is a cumulative frequency histogram. So we're not going to practice that again. We are moving on. We are also going to skip page 12. And we're going to go to the last kind of thing I'm going to teach you today, which is on page 13, a relative frequency histogram. A relative frequency histogram means relative to the total. And if it is relative to the total, then that means you will be expressing it as a percent of the total. Okay, so let's do that. This first set of data is about number of free throws. And how many total free throw items are there in this set? 1 plus 5 plus 10 plus 4 is 20 items. So that means the people that made 0 and 1 free throws, there was one person who made 0 to 1 free throws. What percent of the total is that? 5%, because 1 out of 20 is 5%. 2 to 3 free throws is what? 25%, because 5 out of 20 is 25%. 10 out of 20, 50%, and 4 out of 20, 20%. So these are now expressed in percentages. So listen up. Guess what goes on the side? Relative frequency. So do you see how you need to pay attention to the label on the side? Because it could be regular frequency. It could be cumulative frequency. It could be relative frequency. There's even one more, but we're not going to graph it. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. So these are I'm going to go by tens. So these are in percents, yes, not counts. And these are kind of weird. It's technically the way it's written here, it's kind of categorical. So we're going to do 0 to 1, and this bar is going to contain the 2 to 3, and this will contain the 4s to 5s, and this is the 6 to 7s. So the first bar contains 5%, and then 25% for the second bar, and 50% for the third bar, and 20% for the final bar, okay? Now there is, so you're just doing the percentages. There is one big daddy that we aren't doing yet. We're going to see some of this later, but it combines everything all together. Any ideas what that would be? A cumulative relative frequency graph. So let's just talk about what this is and not actually make one. How's that? So let's see. The fact that it is cumulative, what are you going to be doing?
We're going to be accumulating it.
We're going to be accumulating it. So accumulate. And what will we be accumulating?
The percentages.
The percentages. So we will, instead of accumulating the counts, we will be accumulating the percentages. So by the end, the final bar will be how tall? 100%. Okay? So that's 4 kinds of things. So your homework for this little mini lesson is pages 14 and 15. Okay? So in summary, you are doing pages 8 and 9 over standard deviation, but then you're also doing pages 14 and 15 over these histogram practices. And that's your homework.